It's been decades since A Different World first hit our TV screens in 1987, a groundbreaking spin-off of The Cosby Show that captured college life, culture, and identity with humor and heart. From Whitley's sass and Dwayne's iconic flip-up glasses to the unforgettable Hillman College spirit, the show defined a generation. But what happened to the cast after the cameras stopped rolling in 1993? Where are they now, in 2025? Some have stayed in Hollywood, others found new passions off-screen. Join us as we look back at the stars of A Different World, then and now, and see how time has shaped their lives and legacies. Lou Myers, born September 26, 1935, in Chesapeake, West Virginia, was 52 when he joined A Different World in 1988 as Vernon Gaines, the grouchy but warm-hearted cafe owner whose sharp tongue masked genuine affection. To fans, he was comic relief. To his peers, he was a complex man whose charm barely contained his demons. Growing up in poverty in a segregated coal mining town, Myers endured racism, hunger, and humiliation that hardened his humor into armor. His mother scrubbed floors for white families, and his absent father left him with a lifelong mistrust of authority. Before acting, he drifted through odd jobs and jazz gigs, often sleeping in his car while chasing fame. By the time Broadway embraced him in the 1980s, he was already known for explosive temper tantrums backstage and a reputation for womanizing. Several co-stars described him as brilliant, yet volatile, sometimes storming off stage or berating younger actors. He faced minor arrests for public intoxication in the 1990s and quietly paid off debts from failed theater ventures. His relationships were equally stormy. He fathered at least one son out of wedlock and was rumored to have multiple affairs during his touring years. Despite these controversies, Myers's portrayal of Vernon earned him respect, but he struggled financially after the show ended. He reportedly lived out of hotels during his final years, performing small jazz sets to survive. Alcohol and diabetes weakened his health, and when pneumonia struck in 2013, he was already frail and alone in a West Virginia hospital. He died at 77, leaving behind an estate valued under $1 million, mostly consisting of musical instruments, handwritten plays, and a few royalties. Those who knew him say he was a tortured genius, forever caught between laughter and regret, a man whose thunderous laugh once filled theaters but faded into the quiet ache of forgotten fame. Jasmine Guy was born on March 10, 1962, in Boston, Massachusetts, and at 25, she stepped into the role of Whitley Gilbert in 1987. A spoiled, razor-tongued Southern belle, whose vulnerability gradually transformed her into a complex, beloved icon of black television. Whitley's journey from arrogance to emotional honesty reflected Jasmine's own hidden battles with identity and self-worth. Raised in a strict, biracial home by a white mother and a black preacher father, she grew up feeling like an outsider in both worlds, constantly pressured to appear perfect. Behind her elegant image was a childhood marked by loneliness and suppression. She learned early to bury her insecurities under poise and control. When fame came, it hit like a storm. Her sudden rise after A Different World sparked both admiration and envy, and the industry's constant comparison to Lisa Bonet wore her down. Off-screen, her reputation for perfectionism led to accusations of being a diva who clashed with producers over creative control and salary disputes. Rumors swirled of shouting matches and near walkouts, though Jasmine always denied them. Her 2008 divorce from Terrence Duckett turned public and vicious, dragging her finances into chaos. She was accused of hiding assets, and whispers of bankruptcy and unpaid taxes circulated for years. Friends say she once survived on borrowed money and emotional support from Afeni Shakur, mother of Tupac, whose friendship exposed her to the darker corners of the music industry. In later interviews, Jasmine confessed to bouts of depression and chronic exhaustion during her career's decline. Yet she rebuilt herself through theater, direction, and teaching. At 63, living quietly in Atlanta, she mentors young Black artists, guarding her peace fiercely. She owns a modest home, drives a vintage BMW, and has rebuilt her net worth to roughly $4 million. An empire carved from pain, survival, and stubborn grace. Mary Alice, born December 3, 1936 in Indianola, Mississippi, was 51 when she portrayed Letty Bostick in A Different World from 1987 to 1989, a maternal yet quietly formidable dorm director whose calm wisdom and moral depth made her one of the show's moral anchors. Audiences adored her for the grace and power she brought to every scene. But behind the serenity was a woman carrying a lifetime of buried trauma. Raised in the segregated South, Mary's early years were marked by strict religious discipline and silent suffering under systemic racism. She began acting in Chicago community theaters, struggling with self-doubt and financial instability before breaking into television. Her career flourished on stage, winning a Tony Award for Fences. Yet she was haunted by the belief that Hollywood never truly valued her talent. Known among peers for her meticulous intensity, she would sometimes walk off sets when directors failed to meet her artistic standards. In the 1990s, she was quietly battling insomnia and depression, retreating further from public life. Rumors persisted that she grew increasingly paranoid, believing she was being exploited by the industry that once praised her. After replacing Gloria Foster as the Oracle in the Matrix Revolutions, she suddenly withdrew from the spotlight, living as a recluse in her Manhattan apartment. Neighbors described her as gentle but distant, her blinds always drawn. When she died on July 27, 2022, at 85, from natural causes, it was said she left no close family behind, only journals filled with reflections on faith, isolation, and the cost of genius. Her estate, modest and valued at under $1 million, included residuals, stage memorabilia, and her Harlem apartment. Yet her impact endures. A woman who mastered silence as an art form, transforming pain into performance, and whose mysterious final years remain one of Hollywood's most quietly tragic stories. Kadeem Hardison was born on July 24, 1965, in Brooklyn, New York, and joined A Different World in 1987, at the age of 22 as Dwayne Wayne, the geeky genius with flip-up glasses, quick wit, and disarming charm. His character evolved from awkward freshman to confident man, symbolizing growth and love for an entire generation. Yet behind the lovable character was a young man struggling to define himself, under the heavy shadow of his famous mother, Bethan Hardison, one of fashion's most powerful figures. Growing up amid models, drugs, and elite parties, Kadeem learned early how false glamour could be. On set, his chemistry with Jasmine Guy was legendary but combustible. Crew members recalled real tension behind the laughter, emotional exhaustion disguised as comic timing. As fame surged, he retreated inward, wary of Hollywood's exploitation of young black stars. His personal life was turbulent. His 3-year marriage to singer Shantae Moore was a storm of passion, jealousy, and mistrust, with public accusations of emotional coldness and infidelity. After their 2000 divorce, he slipped into reclusion, allegedly battling alcoholism and creative paralysis. His biggest heartbreak came in 2004 when his long-awaited sitcom revival was canceled before airing, after negative test screenings that branded him out of touch. Industry insiders whispered that Kadeem had become difficult, disappearing from sets and rejecting roles he saw as demeaning. His friendships, especially with Darrell M. Bell, were his lifeline, keeping him grounded when money and fame evaporated. Today, at 60, Hardison lives quietly in Los Angeles, far from Hollywood's spotlight, raising his daughter and teaching acting workshops. He owns a modest home, vintage motorcycles, and some stock investments valued around $2.5 million. Though once the face of youthful optimism, Kadeem now carries the melancholy of someone who saw fame's illusions too clearly and paid the price for knowing. Darrell M. Bell was born on May 10, 1963, in Chicago, Illinois, and joined a different world at 24 as Ron Johnson, the charming hustler whose ambition and humor made him both lovable and frustrating. His character embodied the complexities of ambition in young Black America. But Darrell's real story was darker. He grew up privileged as the son of Travers Bell Jr., the first Black owner of a Wall Street firm, yet that privilege was poisoned with pressure. When his father died suddenly while Darrell was still in his 20s, he spiraled into guilt and self-destruction. Friends described a young man partying excessively, gambling, and burning bridges in an attempt to escape his grief. On set, his charm masked turmoil. Producers tolerated his lateness and occasional arrogance because of his undeniable charisma. But the cracks deepened after A Different World ended. His next big role, Homeboys in Outer Space, became a cultural disaster. Critics labeled it an embarrassment to Black television. And Darrell was mocked as having sold out. The humiliation crushed him. He stopped getting calls, and Hollywood doors closed overnight. His long-term relationship with Tempest Bledsoe began around that time. Two fallen sitcom stars finding comfort in each other's isolation. Though they have never married, their partnership has survived decades of industry rejection, though insiders whisper of long separations and emotional distance. Darrell later confessed to losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in failed business ventures and gambling debts, only recovering after years of financial ruin. He reinvented himself as a producer and motivational speaker, using his pain as a cautionary tale for young Black creatives. Now 62, Bell lives a low-profile life in Los Angeles, sharing a $4 million net worth with Bledsoe, owning partial rights to several television projects. He remains a man of contradictions, brilliant, bruised, and forever haunted by the glittering ghost of a world that once adored him. Cree Summer, born July 7, 1969, in Los Angeles, was 19 when she brought to life Winifred Freddie Brooks in A Different World in 1988. On screen, Freddie's free-spirited idealism and poetic rebellion made her the soul of the show's younger generation, embodying both vulnerability and fearless honesty. Off-screen, Cree's story mirrored that wild unpredictability. Born to Canadian musicians Don Franks and Lily Clark, she grew up on a commune, surrounded by creativity, but lacking stability. Her teenage years were turbulent, marked by brief homelessness, experimentation with psychedelics, and a fierce struggle for identity. After A Different World, Cree found refuge in voice acting, but fame came with chaos. Her 1999 album, Street Fairy, was praised critically but bombed commercially, sparking an explosive dispute with Sony after she accused executives of racial bias and creative censorship. Her bohemian persona also led to a string of passionate but volatile relationships. Her romance with co-star Kadeem Hardison ended abruptly amid rumors of jealousy, and her later marriage to film producer Angelo Pullen collapsed in 2022 following financial tension and her emotional withdrawal. She has openly admitted to battling depression and creative exhaustion, saying she burned out chasing authenticity. Though she has avoided legal scandals, Cree was long rumored to clash with studio executives for refusing to conform to industry expectations. Her style, part mystic, part revolutionary, made her both admired and feared in Hollywood circles. Now 56, she continues to thrive as a voice actress, lending her voice to countless animated icons. She divides her time between Los Angeles and Toronto, raising her two daughters in what she calls a non-traditional family of love and art. Her estimated $4 million fortune, built on decades of steady voice work and music rights, hides a life of constant reinvention. A woman who never stopped fighting to exist on her own terms. Charnel Brown, born October 30, 1965, in East Hampton, New York, was 28 when she took on the role of Kim Reese in A Different World in 1988. Her character, a focused, intelligent pre-med student, represented the struggles of ambition and friendship with grace and quiet strength, balancing the show's more flamboyant personalities. Yet Brown's off-screen life was far from as stable. Raised in a working-class home filled with emotional tension, she often spoke of feeling invisible as a child, developing perfectionist habits to earn affection. Behind her disciplined image was a woman battling self-doubt and anxiety. In the early years of her career, she faced brutal criticism for her appearance and was reportedly told she was too plain for leading roles, a comment that haunted her for years. During A Different World, insiders whispered about conflicts between Brown and writers who allegedly minimized her character's screen time, pushing her into emotional isolation. After the show ended, she struggled to find work. Her wholesome image became a barrier in an industry obsessed with controversy and youth. A disastrous film investment in 1997 wiped out much of her savings, leaving her disillusioned and withdrawn from Hollywood for nearly a decade. Her marriage to Eric Brown, though enduring, weathered long periods of estrangement and persistent rumors of infidelity that neither confirmed nor denied. Brown later found solace in teaching, founding an acting school in Houston, where she mentors young artists, though friends say she remains haunted by the career she might have had. Now 60, she lives quietly, far removed from Hollywood's glare. Her current net worth of about $4 million stems from real estate and her academy. A modest empire for a woman once on the edge of disappearance. Proof that survival, for her, became its own form of artistry. Glynn Turman, born January 31, 1947, in New York City, was 41 when he first appeared as Colonel Bradford Taylor in A Different World in 1988. His character, the firm but wise retired military professor, became one of the show's moral anchors, a figure of strength, discipline, and compassion whose mentorship shaped not just students on screen, but young Black audiences across America. Yet behind that stoic authority was a man who had endured extraordinary pain. Raised in Harlem by a single mother who worked multiple jobs, Turman discovered acting at 12, but the path to stability was brutal. His early-stage success in A Raisin in the Sun was followed by years of struggle and typecasting in Hollywood's racially narrow landscape. His 1978 marriage to soul legend Aretha Franklin thrust him into a world of fame and pressure. Their 6-year union, fiery and public, unraveled amid accusations of infidelity and constant touring that eroded intimacy. 2 years after their divorce, Turman suffered the most devastating loss of his life when his son, Glynn Jr., was fatally stabbed during a fight outside a restaurant, a tragedy that nearly ended his career. He withdrew from acting for several years, grappling with guilt and rage. Insiders recall his notorious temper on sets during the 1990s, when grief often made him volatile and unpredictable. Yet, Turman clawed his way back, earning critical acclaim and an Emmy that redefined him as one of television's most respected veterans. Now 78, he remains active in film and ranching, living quietly in Los Angeles with his wife Joanne Allen. His fortune, estimated at $1.5 million, comes largely from acting royalties, stage investments, and a modest California ranch. Those who know him describe a man still haunted by ghosts of his lost son, his failed marriage, and the years Hollywood looked away, but who carries it all with the same quiet dignity that made Colonel Taylor unforgettable. Dawn Lewis, born on August 13, 1961, in Brooklyn, New York, was 26 when she debuted as Jaleesa Vinson in 1987. Her character, a sharp, mature student returning to college after a failed marriage, captured audiences with her poise and confidence. On screen, Jaleesa embodied the resilience of Black women breaking barriers, but off-screen, Lewis's calm exterior concealed the pain of a fractured childhood, marked by emotional neglect and insecurity. Raised by a strict mother who demanded perfection and a father who was frequently absent, she grew up craving approval while masking her sensitivity. Her early years in show business were a battlefield. She fought to be taken seriously in a world that wanted her to smile more and tone it down. Despite co-writing the show's iconic theme song, she was underpaid and often sidelined by producers who favored lighter-skinned actresses. Her abrupt removal from Hangin' with Mr. Cooper in the mid-90s came amid whispers of creative disputes and tension with male co-stars who resented her assertiveness. Those close to her recall a period of depression and alcoholism she never publicly admitted to. Her brief marriage to NBA player Johnny Newman turned toxic when reports surfaced of his violent temper and alleged infidelity, leading to a bitter divorce in 2006. Lewis withdrew from Hollywood afterward, shifting to voice acting to escape the industry's brutality. In private, she battled loneliness, though she presented herself as eternally optimistic. Now 64, she leads a quiet life split between Los Angeles and Atlanta, teaching acting and producing gospel music. Her fortune, roughly $4 million, comes from property, songwriting royalties, and steady television work. Yet, beneath the serenity, former colleagues say she remains wary of fame, describing her as a woman who learned to smile through pain after decades of surviving Hollywood's quiet cruelty. Jada Pinkett Smith, born September 18, 1971, in Baltimore, Maryland, was just 20 years old when she joined A Different World in 1991 as Lena James, a tough, outspoken transfer student from Baltimore, whose raw honesty and urban toughness immediately set her apart. Lena became the voice of realism on the show, and her emotional walls mirrored Jada's own guarded youth. Born into chaos, Jada was raised by her mother, Adrienne Banfield, a recovering heroin addict, and spent her childhood oscillating between fear, anger, and fierce independence. At school, she was teased for her size and sharp tongue, often masking pain with defiance. Her early career was riddled with rejection until A Different World gave her a national stage, but fame exposed her to a darker current. On set, she was rumored to clash with co-stars, accused of being difficult and overly ambitious. As her fame grew, so did the turbulence. Reports of controlling behavior, on and off affairs, and manipulation within her marriage to Will Smith plagued her reputation. Her later entanglement confession with August Alsina became one of Hollywood's most dissected scandals, transforming her talk show Red Table Talk into both a confessional booth and a public battlefield. Behind her composure, Jada struggled with depression, suicidal thoughts, and an obsession with reinvention. Insiders described her as magnetic yet merciless, a woman who could charm or cut with equal precision. Her relationship with Will, long strained, became an open secret of emotional distance and separate lives under the same empire. Now, 54, she lives between Malibu and Calabasas, still producing and writing while maintaining an almost unsettling transparency that blurs truth and spectacle. Her personal fortune is valued at around $60 million, built from acting, production, and her memoir, Worthy, while her joint assets with Will Smith exceed $400 million. Proof that even amid scandal, Jada's greatest performance has always been survival itself. Sinbad, born David Adkins on November 10, 1956, in Benton Harbor, Michigan, was 31 when he became Coach Walter Oakes in 1987. His performance as the goofy, big-hearted dorm director turned him into one of television's most beloved comedic figures. But behind the easy smiles was a man wrestling with chaos. Raised in a strict military household under a domineering Air Force father, Sinbad learned early to rebel. He was eventually court-martialed and discharged for insubordination. His early career was a blur of near successes and crushing failures. Sleeping in his car between comedy gigs before A Different World changed everything. Fame inflated his confidence to dangerous levels. By the 1990s, he was headlining sold-out tours and living extravagantly, collecting luxury cars and bankrolling doomed film projects. His compulsive spending and trust in shady advisors led to financial collapse, 2 bankruptcies, $11 million in debt, and IRS investigations. He was notorious for his stubbornness on set, rewriting scripts, and clashing with producers who accused him of being too controlling. His marriage to Meredith Fuller reflected his internal turbulence. The couple divorced in 1992, remarried in 2002, and endured constant tension fueled by Sinbad's ego and absence. His children later spoke about growing up with a father who couldn't switch off the performer, describing him as loving yet unpredictable. When he suffered a massive stroke in 2020, it seemed like fate's punishment for decades of excess. Doctors doubted he would walk again, but through grueling rehabilitation and sheer willpower, he returned to the public eye in 2025, frailer yet spiritually awakened. Now 68, Sinbad lives modestly, giving motivational talks about humility and resilience. His net worth of around $4 million reflects both recovery and restraint, investments in real estate, and royalties replacing the chaos of his youth. Yet, those who've met him lately say the same thing. Behind that familiar grin lies a man who finally understands that laughter, for all its power, cannot always silence the pain it hides. Lisa Bonet, born November 16, 1967, in San Francisco, California, was 20 when she reprised her role as Denise Huxtable in the first season of A Different World in 1987. Her character embodied the dream of youthful rebellion, stylish, independent, and defiant. But Bonet herself was far more complex than the carefree image she projected. Her relationship with Bill Cosby became the show's most whispered-about tension. he saw her as a threat to the wholesome image of The Cosby Show, especially after she took on the controversial role in Angel Heart, 1987, a film that nearly derailed her career due to its explicit content. Behind the camera, Lisa was already pushing against Hollywood's expectations, refusing to be typecast or controlled. Born to a free-spirited mother and an opera-singing father, her childhood was one of emotional distance and early exposure to artistic chaos. Fame came young, but so did disillusionment. After marrying Lenny Kravitz, her life seemed like a bohemian fantasy: music, art, and rebellion. But friends later revealed that jealousy, infidelity, and drug use poisoned their marriage. Her daughter Zoe grew up amidst their turbulent love, and Bonet's increasing mistrust of Hollywood pushed her into isolation. Years later, she found solace in Jason Momoa, though even that seemingly storybook romance ended in 2024 after quiet years of estrangement. Sources close to her described her retreat into mysticism, holistic healing, and self-imposed exile in her California home. Once a symbol of counterculture glamour, Lisa became an enigma, selective, spiritual, and unbending. At 57, she lives largely off her properties and royalties, with an estimated net worth around $12 million. Bonet remains both idolized and misunderstood, a woman who burned bridges with quiet dignity and now walks the ashes in peace. Thank you for joining us on this nostalgic journey through classic television history. If you enjoyed learning about the cast of A Different World and where they are now, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more vintage Hollywood retrospectives, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing your memories and suggestions, so let us know which TV show or movie cast you'd like us to feature next.